Hey guys, this is the complete chronological timeline of the Fallout story. Hope you enjoy. Fallout 76. Fallout 76 takes place in 2102, making it the earliest game in the Fallout timeline, occurring just 25 years after the Great War that devastated the world on October 23, 2077. The game is set in Appalachia, the post-apocalyptic remains of West Virginia, and follows the residents of Vault 76 as they emerge on Reclamation Day to rebuild civilization. Vault 76 was a control vault, meaning it had no sinister Vault-Tec experiment attached to it. The vault was specifically designed to house some of America's best and brightest citizens, hand-picked to be the ones who would reclaim and rebuild the wasteland after a predetermined period. Built in 2076 to commemorate America's tricentennial, 300 years after the nation's founding, Vault 76 was always intended to open exactly 25 years after the bombs fell. The residents were well-educated, skilled professionals chosen for their ability to contribute to rebuilding society. On Reclamation Day, October 23, 2102, the vault's automated systems unsealed the massive door, and the inhabitants prepared to venture into the wasteland. However, the player character, known as the Vault Dweller, wakes up late after apparently celebrating too hard the night before. They find that the Overseer and all the other residents have already left the vault. The Overseer left behind a message and holotapes directing the Vault Dwellers to follow her journey and learn to survive in this new world. As the Vault Dweller explores Appalachia, they quickly discover that something has gone terribly wrong. The region is completely devoid of human life, or rather, devoid of living humans. Corpses, skeletons, and holotapes tell the story of what transpired during the 25 years the vault was sealed. The Vault Dweller encounters several factions that once existed in Appalachia, though they are all now extinct. The first group the Vault Dweller learns about is the Responders, a volunteer organization that formed immediately after the bombs fell. The Responders were made up of firefighters, police officers, medical personnel, and other emergency service workers who dedicated themselves to helping survivors. They established camps throughout Appalachia, providing food, water, medical care, and training to anyone who needed it. The Responders set up their main base of operations at Morgantown Airport and the Charleston Fire Department. The Vault Dweller also discovers the Appalachian Brotherhood of Steel, an early chapter of the Brotherhood that was founded by Lieutenant Elizabeth Taggarty and her unit from the United States Army. After the bombs fell, Taggarty's unit at Camp Venture received communications from Roger Maxson in California, who was forming the Brotherhood of Steel. Taggarty's forces became the Appalachian chapter, focused on containing threats and recovering pre-war military technology. They were a more pragmatic and militarily focused group than their West Coast counterparts. The Free States were a group of anti-government survivalists who had been preparing for nuclear war even before it happened. Suspicious of the government and Vault-Tec, many Free States members refused to enter the vaults when the bombs fell. Instead, they retreated to their well-stocked bunkers throughout the Mire region of Appalachia. Despite their distrust of authority, they were highly skilled and well-prepared survivors who developed advanced technology to defend themselves. There were also the Raiders, various gangs of violent criminals and opportunists who preyed on other survivors. While not organized into a single faction, these groups terrorized Appalachia and contributed to the region's instability. The mystery that the Vault Dweller must unravel is why all these groups, despite their resources and capabilities, are now completely dead. Following the Overseer's trail leads to the discovery of a horrifying plague, the Scorched Plague. This mutagenic disease transforms humans and creatures into scorched, mutated beings with blackened ash-covered skin covered in painful lesions that glow like embers. Green crystalline protrusions of ultrasight emerge from their bodies, and victims lose their higher mental functions, becoming aggressive and violent. The true horror of the scorched plague is that it's not a natural mutation. The Vault Dwellers' investigation reveals that the plague is spread by scorch beasts, massive mutated bats that were created through Enclave experiments. The Appalachian Enclave, operating from a secret bunker beneath the White Spring Resort, was the remnant of the United States government. Their facility was controlled by MODIS, Multiple Operations Directorate and Utility System, an artificial intelligence that managed the bunker. The story of the Scorch Beast's creation is particularly disturbing. In 2083, the Enclave conducted experiments on bats in an old mining facility, exposing them to biochemical agents. Secretary of Agriculture Thomas Eckhart, who had become the Enclave's de facto leader, wanted to manufacture a crisis that would allow him to raise the DEFCON level and gain access to nuclear launch codes. He deliberately released the Scorch Beasts as a bioweapon, believing he could control them. However, Eckhart catastrophically underestimated the threat. The Scorch Beasts proved impossible to control and began spreading the scorched plague throughout Appalachia. The plague spread rapidly. Scorch Beasts could infect people from the air as they flew overhead, spraying infectious droplets. Victims who came into direct contact with Scorch Beasts or scorched were even more likely to become infected. The infection created a hive mind connecting all scorched to a Scorch Beast queen. This queen could command the scorched telepathically, directing them to attack settlements and survivors. While scorched retained enough intelligence to use weapons and basic tools, they lost all capacity for reason or communication beyond simple, aggressive vocalizations. As the Vault Dweller follows the Overseer's trail, they piece together how each faction attempted to combat the scorched threat and ultimately failed. The responders, despite their humanitarian mission and medical expertise, couldn't develop a vaccine quickly enough. Dr. Claire Hudson at the AVR Medical Center in Charleston made significant progress on a vaccine, but the responders were overwhelmed before they could complete and distribute it. The scorched eventually attacked the Morgantown airport in force, wiping out the remaining responders. The Brotherhood of Steel attempted a military solution. They developed specialized weapons using ultrasight, a rare crystalline material that proved effective against the scorched. They created ultrasight-powered laser weapons and discovered that depleted ultrasight could make regular ultrasight deposits explosive, useful for destroying Scorch Beast nests. They also formed an alliance with the Fire Breathers, an elite group that specialized in fighting the scorched in close quarters. Despite their military might and technological advantages, the Brotherhood was gradually worn down. Scorch Beasts attacked their bases relentlessly, and the plague spread faster than they could contain it. In 2095, the Brotherhood attempted a final assault on the Scorch Beast's primary nest at what would become known as Fisher Site Prime. The assault failed catastrophically, and the remainder of the Brotherhood was wiped out. The Free States, true to their self-reliant nature, developed their own technological countermeasures. They created the Scorched Detection System, SDS, a network of sensors that could track Scorch Beast movements, and developed Scorch Beast lures to draw the creatures into kill zones. However, their isolationist nature meant they didn't share this technology widely, and internal divisions weakened them. Harper's Ferry fell to the Scorch Beasts in 2086, and the Free States were gradually eliminated as they refused to unite with other factions. The Raiders, predictably, focused on their own survival, and continued preying on others even as the scorched plague spread. Their lack of organization and tendency toward internal conflicts made them particularly vulnerable. Many raider groups were transformed into scorched, and the survivors either fled Appalachia or were hunted down. By 2102, when Vault 76 opened, every human in Appalachia had either fled the region, died, or been transformed into a scorched. The Vault Dwellers emerged into a silent, dead region, haunted by the scorched and terrorized by scorch beasts. Following the Overseer's instructions, the Vault Dweller trains with the automated systems left behind by the fire breathers, learning to combat the scorched effectively. They recover Dr. Hudson's research from the AVR Medical Center and successfully synthesize a vaccine against the scorched plague, inoculating themselves and potentially other Vault Dwellers. The Overseer's mission, however, goes beyond simple survival. She had received secret orders from Vault Tech before the war to secure Appalachia's nuclear missile silos. 3 nuclear silos remain operational in Appalachia, and the Overseer believed these weapons could be used to combat the Scorch Beast threat. The Vault Dwellers' investigation leads them to the White Spring Bunker, where they encounter Modus. The Enclave AI reveals the origin of the Scorch Beasts and provides the Vault Dweller with access to the nuclear silos. Modus has its own agenda. It wanted to restore the Enclave to power and connect to an orbital weapons platform. But it also recognizes that the Scorch Beasts have become an existential threat that must be eliminated. With Modus's assistance, the Vault Dweller gains the necessary credentials to access one of the 3 nuclear silos: Site Alpha, Site Bravo, or Site Charlie. Each silo is heavily defended by automated security systems and requires significant effort to infiltrate and activate. However, the Vault Dweller successfully launches a nuclear missile at Fisher Site Prime, the largest Scorch Beast nest in Appalachia. The nuclear detonation doesn't simply destroy the nest, it awakens the Scorch Beast Queen, an enormous and incredibly powerful creature. This level 95 enemy emerges from the irradiated blast zone, and the Vault Dweller must fight it. The Scorch Beast Queen is extraordinarily difficult to defeat and typically requires multiple well-armed players working together to bring it down. When the Scorch Beast Queen is finally killed, the hive mind connecting all the Scorched is shattered. While individual Scorched and Scorch Beasts remain dangerous, they are no longer coordinated by a central intelligence. This prevents the Scorched Plague from spreading beyond Appalachia's borders and ensures that the threat is contained. The Vault Dwellers can now begin the true work of reclaiming and rebuilding Appalachia. The Wastelanders update, which takes place in 2103, 1 year after Vault 76 opened, dramatically changes the landscape. People begin returning to Appalachia, drawn by rumors of safety, treasure, and opportunities. 2 major groups arrive: the settlers, led by Paige, who want to build a peaceful community at Foundation, and the raiders, led by Meg Groberg, who establish themselves at the crater in the crashed remains of the Valiant 1 space station. The Overseer, concerned about the returning population's vulnerability to the Scorched Plague, tasks the Vault Dwellers with establishing contact with both groups and convincing them to accept inoculation. Using Dr. Hudson's research, the Overseer and Vault Dwellers find a way to mass-produce the vaccine by incorporating it into Nuka-Cola drinks produced at the abandoned Kanawha Nuka-Cola plant. The Vault Dwellers must navigate the complex politics between the settlers and raiders, both of whom are skeptical of each other and of the Vault Dwellers' intentions. Through diplomatic efforts, or intimidation, depending on the player's approach, both factions eventually accept the inoculation, protecting the returning population from the Scorched Plague. The Wastelanders storyline also involves a search for Vault 79, which supposedly contains the United States gold reserves. Both the settlers and raiders want access to this treasure, and the Vault Dweller must choose which faction to support in the heist. The gold represents a potential foundation for a new economy in Appalachia, giving whoever controls it significant power and influence. The Brotherhood of Steel returns to Appalachia in the Steel Rain update, arriving in 2104. This is the first expeditionary force, led by Paladin Layla Romani, sent by Elder Maxon from the West Coast to investigate what happened to the Appalachian chapter and to recover any technology they left behind. Upon arrival, they receive the Scorched Plague inoculation from the Vault Dwellers. The first expeditionary force faces significant challenges. They discover evidence that some members of the old Appalachian Brotherhood may have engaged in questionable practices, and they must deal with internal conflicts about the Brotherhood's mission. Knight Daniel Shin represents a more traditional, technology-focused approach to the Brotherhood's mission, while Romani believes the Brotherhood should focus on protecting people, not just hoarding technology. The Vault Dwellers become involved in this conflict and must help the Brotherhood deal with various threats, including super mutants and other dangers. The player's choices determine whether the Brotherhood's future in Appalachia will focus on Elder Maxon's traditional doctrine of technology preservation, or Romani's more humanitarian approach of protecting ordinary people. The responders also return in later updates. Having been completely wiped out by the Scorched, the organization reforms with new members and establishes a base at the White Spring Resort. They even gain access to a functioning vertibird, allowing them to travel beyond Appalachia to help survivors in other regions, including the ruins of Pittsburgh, known as the Pit, after the war. Through all of this, Fallout 76 establishes several important elements of Fallout lore. It shows how early post-war survivors attempted to organize and rebuild society. It demonstrates the immediate aftermath of the nuclear war and how unprepared most people were for the changed world. The game also establishes that in some regions, cooperation between factions might have saved everyone, but pride, distrust, and conflicting priorities led to mutual destruction. The Vault Dwellers of Vault 76 succeed where earlier survivors failed because they arrived after the worst of the crisis had passed. They had the advantage of the previous group's research and sacrifice, and they were willing to work together and help both settlers and raiders survive. By distributing the Scorched Plague vaccine and helping new arrivals establish themselves safely, the Vault Dwellers fulfill Vault 76's original purpose: to reclaim and rebuild America. Fallout. Fallout, the first game in the series, takes place in 2161, 84 years after the Great War. This makes it 59 years after the events of Fallout 76 and establishes the series' core setting and tone. The game is set in Southern California, in a region that would come to be known as the core region of the new California Republic. The protagonist is known as the Vault Dweller, a 20-year-old resident of Vault 13 who has lived their entire life underground. The Vault Dweller is described as part of the third generation to live in the vault. Their grandparents were among the original inhabitants who sealed themselves inside when the bombs fell. The player can customize the Vault Dweller's attributes and can choose from preset characters, including Albert Cole, Max Stone, and Natalia Dubrovsky, though most players create their own custom character. Vault 13 was supposedly designed to be sealed for 200 years as part of Vault-Tech's experiments on isolated populations. The vault's location was likely beneath Mount Whitney in Southern California. The inhabitants lived in relative comfort and safety for over 80 years, isolated from the wasteland above and believing they were following Vault-Tech's standard shelter protocol. The vault was governed by an overseer who was dedicated to protecting the inhabitants and ensuring they remained safe and isolated from the dangerous outside world. The game begins with a crisis. Vault 13's water purification chip has malfunctioned and broken beyond repair. This chip is essential for the vault's water recycling system. Without it, the vault's water supply will run out in approximately 150 days, and everyone will die of thirst. The overseer determines that the only solution is to send someone to the surface to find a replacement water chip. The vault dweller is chosen for this critical mission. This choice is significant. The vault has remained sealed since the bombs fell, and sending someone outside violates the fundamental principle that had governed the vault's existence. However, the overseer believes the alternative is extinction, and the vault dweller is deemed the person most likely to survive and succeed in the wasteland. Emerging from Vault 13 for the first time, the vault dweller is confronted with a world beyond anything they could have imagined from the safe confines of the vault. The wasteland is harsh, dangerous, and filled with mutated creatures, radiation, and desperate survivors. The first major settlement the vault dweller encounters is Shady Sands, a small farming community led by Aradesh that is struggling to survive. Here, the vault dweller can recruit Ian, a former caravan guard who becomes one of the game's companions. Ian is an experienced wasteland traveler and skilled with pistols and submachine guns. The vault dweller's journey takes them to various locations across Southern California. In Junktown, they encounter another small settlement built around the remains of a pre-war town. Here, they can recruit Dogmeat, a dog who becomes a loyal companion. The vault dweller also meets Tycho, a former desert ranger who is well-versed in survival and combat. The search for the water chip leads the vault dweller to the ruins of a place called Necropolis, which was once the city of Bakersfield. Necropolis is now inhabited by ghouls, humans who were heavily irradiated during and after the war. Rather than dying or mutating into mindless creatures, these individuals survived, but their bodies were transformed. Their skin became leathery and decayed. They lost their hair, and they developed an almost skeletal appearance. However, most ghouls retained their intelligence and personalities. Necropolis is divided between different groups of ghouls. Some, led by a ghoul named Set, maintain a semblance of civilization in the ruins. Others have gone feral, losing their minds and becoming aggressive, zombie-like creatures. The vault dweller must navigate the complex politics of Necropolis carefully, as the ghouls are understandably suspicious of smooth-skinned humans from vaults. In Necropolis, the vault dweller encounters Harold, a unique mutant who isn't quite a ghoul or a super mutant, but something in between. Harold's story is tragic. He was a merchant before the war who was exposed to forced evolutionary virus, FEV, in a place called the Mariposa military base. But the exposure wasn't complete enough to fully transform him. Harold would appear in several later Fallout games, his story spanning decades of wasteland history. Critically, the vault dweller discovers that Vault 12, located beneath Necropolis, has a functional water chip. However, accessing it is complicated by Necropolis's water supply issues and the conflict between ghoul factions. Through careful negotiation or combat, the vault dweller can obtain the water chip, seemingly completing their primary mission. Returning to Vault 13 with the water chip, the vault dweller expects to be celebrated as a hero. Instead, the overseer reveals that there's a far more serious threat emerging in the wasteland. Reports have been coming in of people disappearing from various settlements. Those who witness these disappearances describe creatures of enormous size and strength, super mutants. The overseer tasks the vault dweller with a new, far more dangerous mission: find the source of the super mutants and destroy it before they can threaten Vault 13. The vault dweller learns that many disappearances are connected to attacks by super mutants, which are growing in number. These creatures appear to be the result of deliberate transformation, not random mutation, suggesting an organized force behind them. Investigation leads the Vault Dweller to discover a disturbing pattern. People aren't just being killed, they're being captured and taken somewhere. The trail leads to various locations, including the Hub, a major trading settlement where multiple caravan routes converge. The Hub provides crucial intelligence about the super mutants and their movements. The Vault Dweller eventually discovers the Mariposa military base, a pre-war facility in the mountains. This base was a top-secret military installation where the United States government conducted experiments with FEV before the Great War. The forced evolutionary virus was designed to create super soldiers who would be stronger, more resilient, and more resistant to radiation than normal humans. However, the experiments were dangerous and morally questionable, and the base's personnel were planning to rebel against their orders when the bombs fell. Exploring the heavily defended base, the Vault Dweller learns that the super mutants are being created here through forced exposure to FEV. Humans are being dipped into vats of the virus, which transforms them into super mutants, massive, incredibly strong creatures with gray or green skin, enhanced durability, and much longer lifespans. However, the transformation process has a terrible cost. Most subjects lose significant intelligence and become violent and aggressive. The Vault Dweller must destroy the vats at Mariposa to prevent more super mutants from being created. This can be accomplished through direct sabotage or, with sufficient science skill, by initiating a nuclear detonation that will destroy the facility completely. Destroying the FEV production facilities is essential, but it's not enough to stop the super mutant threat. Through interrogations, holotapes, and investigations, the Vault Dweller learns of a mysterious figure called the Master who commands the super mutants. The Master is directing a plan called the Unity, a vision of transforming all of humanity into super mutants to create a new, unified race free from the conflicts and weaknesses that led to nuclear war. Finding the Master requires piecing together various clues from across the wasteland. The trail eventually leads to a cathedral in the ruins of Los Angeles, which serves as a front for a strange cult. Beneath the cathedral lies a massive military base, later revealed to be the remains of the West Tech research facility. And deep within that base, in a vault of flesh and machinery, dwells the Master himself. The Master is one of the most tragic and memorable villains in gaming history. He was once Richard Moreau, or Richard Gray, a man who traveled with Harold to Mariposa before the war ended. When exposed to FEV in the base's vats, Harold managed to escape, but Richard was trapped. The FEV transformed him in a uniquely horrible way. Rather than becoming a single super mutant, his body merged with other organic matter, computers, and the base's systems. He became a grotesque fusion of flesh and machine, impossibly large and containing multiple bodies and consciousnesses within his mass. The transformation drove the Master to the brink of madness initially, but over decades, he developed his vision of the Unity. He genuinely believes he is saving humanity. In his view, humans are weak, divided by race, ideology, and petty conflicts. These divisions led to nuclear war and will inevitably lead to humanity's extinction. By transforming everyone into super mutants, the Master believes he can create a unified race that will be stronger, more resilient, and free from the prejudices that divided the old world. The Master has been abducting humans for years, transforming them into super mutants and building an army. He controls a cult on the surface, the Children of the Cathedral, that recruits followers and provides cover for his operations. his super mutants have established a military base at Mariposa and are actively kidnapping humans from across Southern California. The confrontation with the Master is one of the game's most significant moments and can play out in several ways. The Vault Dweller can simply fight the Master and his super mutant guards, a difficult but possible combat challenge. However, the game allows for a more sophisticated approach. If the Vault Dweller has discovered certain information during their travels, they can engage the Master in philosophical debate. The Master will explain his vision of the Unity, arguing that it's the only way to save humanity from itself. He'll point out that human prejudice, greed, and violence caused the Great War, and that only by transcending human nature can the species survive. The Vault Dweller can counter these arguments in several ways, but the most devastating involves revealing a terrible flaw in the Master's plan. Through careful research at various locations, the Vault Dweller can discover that super mutants created by FEV are sterile. They cannot reproduce. Additionally, the transformation process works best on humans with minimal radiation exposure and genetic damage. Most wasteland inhabitants have been exposed to radiation for decades, meaning the transformation often fails or produces less intelligent super mutants. When presented with this evidence, particularly autopsy reports proving super mutant sterility, the Master is devastated. His entire philosophy crumbles. The Unity cannot work if super mutants cannot reproduce. The Master realizes that his vision would lead to the extinction of both humans and super mutants. The only unradiated humans left are in vaults, and there aren't nearly enough of them to sustain a super mutant population. Faced with the failure of his life's work and the realization that he has been creating a dead-end species, the Master can be convinced to commit suicide, destroying himself and his base. This ending is particularly poignant because the Master genuinely believed he was saving humanity, only to discover he was actually ensuring its extinction. Alternatively, the Vault Dweller can simply destroy the Master's base, fighting their way through waves of super mutants and setting off the base's nuclear reactor to destroy it and the Master within. Either way, with both the Mariposa military base and the Master's base destroyed, the super mutant threat is neutralized. The remaining super mutants, without the Master's direction and with no way to create more of their kind, scatter across the wasteland. The Vault Dweller returns to Vault 13, expecting to finally be welcomed as the hero who saved everyone. However, the ending takes a dark turn. The Overseer, while grateful for the Vault Dweller's success, reveals that they cannot return to the vault. The Overseer's reasoning is chilling. The Vault Dweller has been exposed to the outside world, has proven they can survive and thrive there, and more importantly, has become a hero to the vault's inhabitants. If the Vault Dweller stays in the vault, others will want to follow their example and leave. The social experiment that is Vault 13 will be compromised, and the Overseer cannot allow that. The canonical ending has the Overseer exiling the Vault Dweller from Vault 13. Despite saving the vault and everyone in it, the hero is cast out into the wasteland, forbidden from ever returning home. This bittersweet ending established Fallout's reputation for morally complex storytelling. There is an alternate, non-canonical ending, available with the bloody mess trait or very negative karma, where the Vault Dweller shoots the Overseer in response to this exile. Exiled from the Vault Dweller wanders the wasteland. Eventually, they found a new settlement called Arroyo. This village, built by former Vault 13 dwellers and their descendants, would become crucial in Fallout 2's storyline. The Vault Dweller married, had children, and became the village elder. Their grandchild would become the protagonist of the next game. Fallout establishes many of the series' core concepts: vaults and their dark experiments, the moral ambiguity of the wasteland, the various mutated creatures and factions, the retro-futuristic 1950s aesthetic, and the use of bottle caps as currency. The game's isometric view, turn-based combat, and deep role-playing mechanics set the template for the series, though later games would evolve these mechanics significantly. The game's ending slides show the consequences of the Vault Dwellers' actions throughout the wasteland. Depending on the player's choices, various settlements either thrive or fail, factions either prosper or collapse, and companions either find happiness or meet tragic ends. This consequence-based storytelling would become a hallmark of the series. The Vault Dwellers' story resonates because it's about a person who does everything right, saves their home, defeats a genocidal threat, and behaves heroically, only to be rejected by the very people they saved. It's a commentary on how societies often fear change and those who bring it, even when that change means survival. The Vault Dwellers' exile and their establishment of Arroyo show that even rejection can lead to new beginnings, and that true heroism sometimes means accepting an unfair outcome for the greater good. Fallout 2. Fallout 2 takes place in 2241, 80 years after the original Fallout and 164 years after the Great War. The game returns to Southern California and the core region, but the world has changed significantly since the Vault Dwellers' time. Where the first game showed the immediate aftermath of people emerging from vaults to find a hostile wasteland, Fallout 2 presents a world where civilization is slowly rebuilding. Nations are forming, and the conflicts are more about politics and competing visions for the future than simple survival. The protagonist is known as the Chosen One, the grandchild of the original Vault Dweller. After being exiled from Vault 13, the Vault Dweller established the village of Arroyo in Northern California. The village developed a tribal culture over the decades, blending wasteland pragmatism with traditions built around respect for the Vault Dweller's legacy. The Chosen One is the child of the village elder, the Vault Dweller's daughter, and has been trained from birth to become the tribe's champion and eventual leader. The player can customize the Chosen One's gender, age between 16 and 35, and attributes. Canonically, the Chosen One was born on March 23, 2221, making them 20 years old at the start of the game. The player can also choose from 3 preset characters, Chitsa, Mingan, or Narg, each with their own backstory. The game begins with the Chosen One undergoing the Temple of Trials, a series of challenges designed to test their worthiness. After completing these trials, they receive their ancestors' Vault 13 jumpsuit as a symbol of their heritage. However, Arroyo is facing a severe crisis. A prolonged drought has decimated the village's crops, and people are beginning to starve. The village elder, the Chosen One's mother, reveals that Arroyo's only hope is to find a Garden of Eden creation kit, or GEC. The GEC is a pre-war terraforming device designed to create sustainable communities in the wasteland. The kit supposedly contains seeds, soil supplements, water purification systems, construction equipment, and holographic instructions for building a new civilization. The Elder believes that with a GEC, Arroyo can overcome the drought and ensure its survival. She reveals that the Vault Dweller mentioned these devices before passing away, suggesting that Vault 13 might have one. The Chosen One sets out on a journey that will take them across a much larger area than the Vault Dweller explored. Where the first game featured approximately 12 locations, Fallout 2 expanded this to dozens of settlements cities, and locations. The wasteland has become considerably more populated and civilized in the 8 decades since the first game. The Chosen One's first major destination is Klamath, a small settlement known for its gecko hunting and trapping. Here they learn that Vic, a radio repairman and trader, has information about Vault 13's location. However, Vic is being held by a slaver named Metzger in a place called the Den. This begins a pattern that will repeat throughout the game. Each location provides a clue or character that leads to the next step in the quest. The Den is a lawless settlement dominated by slavery and drug trade. The two most powerful factions are slavers led by Metzger and gangs like the Tyler Gang. The Chosen One must navigate this dangerous environment to rescue Vic, either through purchasing his freedom, stealth, or violence. The Den represents how parts of the wasteland have become more organized, but not necessarily more moral. Slavery is an accepted institution in many areas, and the drug trade flourishes. From the Den, the journey takes the Chosen One through various settlements, each with its own character and problems. Modoc is a farming community dealing with a dispute between farmers and people living in underground tunnels who are stealing crops. Redding is a mining town where competing factions, the New California Republic, Vault City, and New Reno, all want to control its gold production. Each location adds layers to the world, showing different ways people have rebuilt society. Vault City is one of the most significant locations, representing one possible vision for the future wasteland. The city was founded by residents of Vault 8, who successfully used their GEC to create a thriving, technologically advanced community. Vault City boasts clean streets, medical technology that far surpasses anything else in the wasteland, and a functional infrastructure. However, it's also deeply xenophobic, authoritarian, and based on a strict caste system. Citizens enjoy full rights and privileges, while outsiders and servants, often thinly veiled slaves, have no rights at all. Vault City is clean and orderly, but at the cost of freedom and equality. In stark contrast is New Reno, the biggest little city in the world. New Reno has become a haven for organized crime, gambling, prostitution, and drug manufacturing. 4 crime families, the Mordinos, Bishops, Wrights, and Salvatores, control different aspects of the city's criminal enterprises and are in constant competition for dominance. The city is simultaneously vibrant, dangerous, and decadent. It's a place where you can become rich or dead with equal ease. The New California Republic, NCR, represents the most successful attempt at rebuilding democratic government. Founded around the town of Shady Sands, which the Vault Dweller helped protect in the first game, the NCR has grown into a federation of settlements with an elected Congress, military, and expanding territory. The NCR espouses ideals of democracy, rule of law, and manifest destiny, believing it's their mission to bring order to the wasteland. However, the NCR's expansion is creating conflicts as they attempt to annex settlements and territories, sometimes against the inhabitants' wishes. The Chosen One eventually locates Vault 13, only to find that it's empty of humans. Instead, the vault has been taken over by intelligent deathclaws, formidable predators that were created through pre-war genetic engineering. These deathclaws have been further modified by exposure to FEV, granting them human-level intelligence and the ability to speak. Led by Gruthar, they've created a peaceful community in the vault, studying the vault's database to learn about human culture and philosophy. The intelligent Deathclaw's story is particularly tragic. They genuinely want to coexist peacefully with humans and have developed a culture that values learning and cooperation. However, the wasteland isn't ready for them. Most humans see Deathclaws as monsters to be killed on sight, and the Deathclaw's attempts at peaceful contact have been met with violence. The Chosen One can choose to help them or betray them, depending on their moral compass. More importantly for the quest, Vault 13 no longer has a Gek. The original inhabitants left the vault decades ago, and their fate becomes one of the game's central mysteries. However, through exploration and investigation, the Chosen One learns that there are other vaults in the region, and one of them might contain a Gek. As the Chosen One explores the wasteland, they begin encountering strange events. People in various settlements are disappearing without explanation. Some communities report seeing strange men in advanced armor taking people away. These reports are sporadic and often dismissed as paranoid fantasies, but they're consistent enough to suggest something organized is happening. The trail leads to various abandoned encampments and raided settlements. The Chosen One finds evidence of advanced technology, power armor fragments, energy weapon scorch marks, and other signs that whoever is behind the disappearances has access to pre-war military equipment. This technology is far more advanced than anything the NCR or even Vault City possesses. Eventually, the investigation leads to Navarro, a heavily fortified military base on the coast. This base serves as a refueling depot for vertibirds, advanced military aircraft that shouldn't exist in the post-war world. The base is staffed by soldiers in advanced power armor who identify themselves as the Enclave. The Enclave is the remnant of the pre-war United States government. When the bombs fell in 2077, key government officials, military leaders, scientists, and their families evacuated to the Poseidon oil rig, a massive offshore platform that had been secretly converted into a secure bunker. The Enclave represents the most powerful faction in the wasteland, with access to pre-war military technology, functioning infrastructure, and a clear organizational hierarchy. However, the Enclave's ideology is deeply disturbing. They view themselves as the only true humans left on Earth. Everyone who remained on the mainland during and after the war has been exposed to radiation and FEV, which was released into the atmosphere when Westtech was hit by bombs. In the Enclave's view, this exposure has genetically corrupted all mainland humans, making them mutants who must be eliminated to preserve humanity's genetic purity. The Enclave's plan is genocidal in scope. They've been developing a modified strain of FEV called the FEV curling 13. This virus is designed to be lethal to anyone with genetic mutations caused by radiation or FEV exposure, which includes virtually everyone in the wasteland. The Enclave plans to release this virus globally, killing nearly everyone on the mainland, while the Enclave remains safe on the oil rig. After the mutants are eliminated, the Enclave will emerge to reclaim and rebuild America according to their vision. To develop and test the FEV curling 13, the Enclave has been kidnapping people from wasteland settlements. These victims are taken to the oil rig and subjected to experiments. The Enclave needs to test the virus on various genetic profiles to ensure it will kill all mutants while leaving the Enclave's pure humans unharmed. This explains the disappearances the Chosen One has been investigating. The Enclave is also responsible for what happened to Vault 13's inhabitants. The Enclave captured the entire Vault population to use as test subjects. These Vault dwellers had minimal radiation exposure compared to surface dwellers, making them valuable for research. The Enclave wanted to understand how their virus would affect people with various levels of genetic corruption. The Chosen One eventually discovers that one captured Vault dweller remains alive. Their own grandfather or grandmother, the original Vault dweller. Now in their 90s or early 100s, the Vault dweller is imprisoned on the oil rig. This revelation adds emotional weight to the conflict. The Enclave hasn't just threatened the wasteland in general, they've personally harmed the Chosen One's family. The Enclave is led by President Dick Richardson, who governs from the oil rig with the full apparatus of pre-war government. He has a cabinet, military hierarchy, and even maintains the pretense of constitutional authority. Richardson genuinely believes the Enclave represents humanity's last hope, and that exterminating the mutants is a necessary tragedy to ensure humanity's survival. His chief of security, Frank Horrigan, is a terrifying figure. A super mutant who was enhanced with power armor and cybernetics, making him nearly invincible and completely loyal to the Enclave's genocidal mission. The Chosen One must infiltrate the oil rig, which is extraordinarily difficult. The base is accessible only by vertibird, heavily guarded and staffed by soldiers in advanced power armor. However, with the right skills, equipment, and allies, it can be done. The Chosen One can approach this final mission in various ways, through stealth, combat, or by turning the Enclave's own forces against each other. On the oil rig, the Chosen One confronts President Richardson. The conversation reveals the full scope of the Enclave's plan and Richardson's justifications for genocide. Richardson argues that he's making a difficult but necessary choice for humanity's future, that the wasteland is doomed to slowly degenerate and die unless decisive action is taken. He offers the Chosen One a position in the Enclave, suggesting that someone of their abilities could help build the new world that will emerge after the Purge. The Chosen One can refuse and fight, or they can pretend to agree while sabotaging the plan from within. The ultimate goal is to destroy the FEV-Curling-13 virus and prevent its release. This requires dealing with the Enclave's scientific team and accessing the base's computer systems. Frank Horrigan serves as the game's final boss. He's an incredibly powerful opponent who represents everything wrong with the Enclave's ideology. A mutant created by the organization that claims to fight mutants, used as a weapon while being despised for what he is. The fight against Horrigan is extremely difficult and often requires help from companions and allies the Chosen One has gathered throughout their journey. The Chosen One must ultimately destroy the oil rig entirely, preventing the Enclave from launching their genocidal plan. This can be accomplished by setting off the rig's nuclear reactor, causing a massive explosion that sinks the entire facility. Before escaping, the Chosen One can free the imprisoned Vault 13 residents, including the Vault Dweller, who can provide closure to the family's story. As the oil rig explodes and sinks into the Pacific, the immediate threat of the FEV-Curling-13 is eliminated. The Enclave's leadership is killed, their military capabilities are severely diminished, and their genocidal plan is stopped. However, the Chosen One learns that some Enclave forces survived at mainland bases like Navarro, setting up potential future conflicts. The Chosen One returns to Arroyo with the Gek, only to find the village in ruins. The Enclave raided Arroyo while the Chosen One was away, killing many and taking the survivors to the oil rig as test subjects. This attack was personal. The Enclave specifically targeted Arroyo because the Chosen One had been interfering with their plans. The destruction of the village and the loss of life falls heavily on the Chosen One's shoulders. However, the ending isn't entirely bleak. The villagers who survived the raid were imprisoned on the oil rig, and the Chosen One's actions freed them. With the Jack and the freed prisoners, including people from Vault 13, a new community can be established. The game's ending slides show that the refugees from Arroyo and Vault 13 work together to create a new settlement that combines the best of both cultures. The ending slides also detail the consequences of the Chosen One's actions throughout the wasteland. Depending on player choices, various settlements either prosper or fail. The New California Republic continues expanding, bringing order, but also bureaucracy and taxation. New Reno either becomes more orderly under one crime family's control or descends into chaos. Vault City either learns tolerance and opens its borders, or becomes increasingly isolated and xenophobic. Every significant choice the player made throughout the game has lasting consequences shown in these slides. Some particularly memorable companion stories play out in the ending. Sulik, a tribal warrior searching for his sister, either finds her or learns she died, depending on the player's actions. Marcus, a super mutant and former member of the Master's army, continues trying to prove that super mutants can coexist peacefully with humans. Cassidy, an old bartender and gunslinger, either finds peace in his final years or drinks himself to death. Vic returns to his daughter and settles down. Myron, a young and amoral drug chemist who invented Jet, a highly addictive stimulant, either continues spreading addiction or meets a deserved bad end. The intelligent Deathclaws of Vault 13 face a tragic fate. Despite the Chosen One's best efforts to protect them, the Enclave eventually tracks them down and massacres them. The Enclave cannot tolerate any form of intelligent non-human life. This genocide occurs regardless of the player's actions, emphasizing that not every problem has a solution and not every tragedy can be prevented. Fallout 2 expands on its predecessor in every way. The world is larger, more complex, and more morally ambiguous. Where the first game dealt with a clearly evil villain, the Master's genocidal unity, Fallout 2 presents various factions with competing visions for the future, none of them entirely right or wrong. The NCR brings order, but also imperialism. Vault City has advanced technology, but practices slavery and genetic discrimination. New Reno is vibrant, but exploitative. Each represents a different possibility for civilization's future. The game also deepens the lore significantly. Players learn more about the pre-war world, the development of FEV, the origins of various mutated creatures, and the divergent timeline that led to the nuclear war. The Enclave's existence reveals that some pre-war institutions survived, though not in any form that would be beneficial to the wasteland. Fallout 2 is notably darker and more mature than its predecessor. The game deals with slavery, drug addiction, prostitution, pornography, and other adult themes more explicitly. It also has a stronger emphasis on dark humor and pop culture references, which some fans appreciated and others felt undermined the serious tone of the original. The canonical ending establishes several key facts. The Enclave is defeated but not entirely destroyed. The Chosen One successfully saves their people and proves themselves worthy of their ancestors' legacy, and civilization continues slowly rebuilding in the core region. The NCR emerges as the dominant power in California, setting the stage for future conflicts over territory and ideology. The Chosen One's fate after the game is left somewhat ambiguous in the ending, though they're shown settling down with their people in the new community. Unlike the Vault Dweller, who was exiled despite their heroism, the Chosen One is celebrated and can live peacefully with their people. This represents a more hopeful outcome, that heroism can sometimes be rewarded and that communities can appreciate those who save them. Fallout 3. Fallout 3 takes place in 2277, 36 years after Fallout 2 and 200 years after the Great War. The game shifts the series setting from the West Coast to the East Coast, specifically to the ruins of Washington, D.C., and the surrounding capital wasteland. This geographical shift allows the game to explore how different regions of America survived the nuclear war and rebuilt in vastly different ways. The protagonist is known as the Lone Wanderer, a 19-year-old resident of Vault 101. The player can customize the Lone Wanderer's name, gender, appearance, and attributes, with the game's opening sequence serving as character creation. The canon birth date is July 13th, 2258. Unlike previous Fallout games which began with the protagonist already grown, Fallout 3's opening follows the Lone Wanderer from birth through childhood to adulthood, creating a strong connection to Vault 101 and their father. The game begins with the Lone Wanderer's birth in 2258. Their mother, Catherine, dies during childbirth due to complications, leaving their father, James, to raise them alone. James is a scientist and physician who works in Vault 101, dedicating himself to the Vault's medical facilities and secretly to his own research. The opening sequence shows key moments in the Lone Wanderer's childhood, receiving their Pip-Boy 3000 at age 10 during their birthday party, taking the GOAT, Generalized Occupational Aptitude Test, at age 16 to determine their future role in the Vault, and various interactions with other Vault residents. Vault 101 was designed with a unique purpose. It was never meant to open. The Vault's experiment was to remain permanently sealed, testing whether a society could survive indefinitely in complete isolation. The Vault Overseer, Alphonse Almodovar, enforces this isolation strictly. The Vault's residents have lived their entire lives underground, believing that the surface is still lethally irradiated and uninhabitable. The Vault's motto is Vault 101. No one ever enters, and no one ever leaves. In 2277, when the Lone Wanderer is 19 years old, their life is turned upside down. They wake up to find the Vault in chaos. Their father has somehow escaped from Vault 101, violating the fundamental law that has governed the Vault since its creation. Security, Chief Officer Mack, and the Overseer's daughter, Amata, rush to warn the Lone Wanderer that the Overseer is furious and blames them for James's escape. The Overseer has ordered the Lone Wanderer's arrest and possible execution. With Amata's help, the Lone Wanderer must flee the Vault. The escape is traumatic. The Lone Wanderer must navigate through areas of the Vault they've never seen, deal with Vault security, and potentially witness violence against their childhood friends. Officer Gomez, the Lone Wanderer's shooting instructor, can be killed by the Overseer's thugs for helping the escape. The Butch Deloria, a former childhood bully, may ask for help saving his mother from radroaches that have infested the Vault's lower levels. Emerging from Vault 101 for the first time, the Lone Wanderer is confronted with the harshness of the Capital Wasteland. Unlike the relatively civilized core region of California where the previous games took place, the Capital Wasteland is far more devastated and lawless. Washington, D.C. received multiple direct nuclear strikes due to its political and strategic importance. The city center is an irradiated ruin filled with super mutants, while the surrounding wasteland is populated by various dangers, including raiders, mutated creatures, and deadly radiation zones. The first major settlement the Lone Wanderer encounters is Megaton, a town built around an unexploded atomic bomb in a crater. Megaton represents the pragmatic approach to survival in the Capital Wasteland. The settlers literally built their town around the thing that could kill them all, because the crater provided protection from the wind, and the bomb's metal shell provided useful building materials. The town is governed by Sheriff Lucas Sims and has become a relatively prosperous trading hub despite its precarious location. In Megaton, the Lone Wanderer can meet Mr. Burke, a mysterious and well-dressed man who works for an unknown employer. Burke offers the lone wanderer a substantial payment to detonate Megaton's atomic bomb, destroying the town completely. His employer apparently finds Megaton's existence offensive and wants it removed from view. This is one of the game's most significant moral choices. The lone wanderer can refuse Burke, kill him, or accept the offer and destroy an entire settlement full of innocent people. The ability to make such a consequential evil choice shocked many players and demonstrated Fallout 3's commitment to player agency. The lone wanderer's search for their father leads them to various locations across the capital wasteland. In Megaton, they learn that James visited the town before going elsewhere. Following the trail leads to Galaxy News Radio, where the DJ 3 Dog offers to help locate James in exchange for fixing the radio tower, allowing 3 Dog's pro-Brotherhood of Steel broadcasts to reach across the wasteland. The search eventually leads to Rivet City, a settlement built inside the remains of an aircraft carrier anchored in the Potomac River. Here, the lone wanderer meets Dr. Madison Lee, a scientist who worked with James before the war on a project called Project Purity. Lee reveals that James wasn't originally a vault dweller at all. He came from the capital wasteland and only entered Vault 101 19 years ago when he and Catherine were pregnant. Project Purity was James and Catherine's dream, to purify the Potomac River and provide clean water to the entire capital wasteland. Water is one of the region's scarcest resources. Most water is irradiated, and clean water is expensive and controlled by traders and raiders. If Project Purity succeeded, it would transform the capital wasteland, providing free, abundant clean water to everyone and allowing agriculture and proper settlements to flourish. The project's base of operations was the Jefferson Memorial, a pre-war monument that housed significant water purification equipment. However, the project faced insurmountable technical problems and was eventually abandoned. After Catherine died giving birth to the lone wanderer in Vault 101, James lost hope and dedicated himself to raising his child in safety rather than pursuing his dream. The revelation that their entire life in Vault 101 was based on James's decision to hide there rather than continue his dangerous research helps the lone wanderer understand their father's motivations. James used his medical expertise to gain entry to the vault, claiming he and his pregnant wife were survivors who needed sanctuary. The overseer accepted them, believing they would strengthen the vault's genetic diversity and medical capabilities. Following Dr. Lee's information, the lone wanderer tracks James to Vault 112, a bizarre facility controlled by a pre-war scientist named Stanislaus Brown. Vault 112's experiment involved keeping its residents in suspended animation while their consciousnesses experienced virtual reality simulations. Braun, the overseer, has kept the residents trapped in these simulations for 200 years, torturing them with various scenarios for his own amusement. The lone wanderer enters the simulation and finds themselves in Tranquility Lane, a perfect 1950s suburban neighborhood that's actually a prison. Braun, appearing as a little girl named Betty, has been subjecting the residents to psychological torture, forcing them to live out the same scenarios repeatedly, wiping their memories and compelling them to hurt each other. James is trapped here, unaware that centuries have passed. The lone wanderer must either play Braun's sadistic games to earn their father's release, or find a secret failsafe that will shut down the simulation entirely. The failsafe involves accessing a hidden terminal that can overload the simulation and kill everyone inside, releasing them from Braun's torment. It's a mercy killing, as the residents have been tortured for 2 centuries and have no life outside the simulation to return to. James can be freed, though he's shaken by his experience. Reunited with their father, the lone wanderer accompanies him back to the Jefferson Memorial. James has decided to restart Project Purity, believing that recent technological developments might solve the problems that stymied the project years ago. Dr. Lee and several other scientists agree to help, returning to the memorial to begin work. However, their arrival doesn't go unnoticed. The Brotherhood of Steel, a military organization dedicated to recovering and preserving pre-war technology, takes interest in Project Purity. The Capital Wasteland chapter of the Brotherhood, led by Elder Owen Lyons, is more humanitarian than their West Coast predecessors. Rather than simply hoarding technology, Elder Lyons believes the Brotherhood should actively protect wastelanders from threats like super mutants. This ideological shift has caused a schism in the Brotherhood. A splinter group called the Brotherhood Outcasts left the main chapter, believing that Lyons has abandoned the Brotherhood's core mission of technology preservation in favor of playing soldier and protector. The Outcasts represent the traditional Brotherhood philosophy and view Lyons's group as traitors to the Brotherhood's founding principles. As work progresses on Project Purity, a greater threat emerges: the Enclave. The Enclave survived the destruction of their oil rig in Fallout 2, and remnants of the organization retreated to Raven Rock, a massive military bunker near Washington, D.C., that once served as the President's Emergency Operations Center. The Enclave has spent 36 years rebuilding their forces, and they've recently begun emerging into the Capital Wasteland in force. The Enclave is now led by President John Henry Eden, who broadcasts propaganda across the wasteland, promoting the Enclave's vision of restoring America. Eden claims the Enclave represents the legitimate United States government and that they've returned to save the wasteland from chaos and mutation. His broadcasts are persuasive and play on people's nostalgia for pre-war America, though his true intentions are far darker. The Enclave learns about Project Purity and recognizes its potential value. Control of the water supply would give them leverage over the entire Capital Wasteland. Enclave forces, led by Colonel Augustus Autumn, attack the Jefferson Memorial before the project can be completed. James sacrifices himself to prevent the Enclave from seizing control, flooding the project's main chamber with lethal radiation and dying in the process to stop Autumn. The lone wanderer barely escapes the memorial with Dr. Lee and the surviving scientists, fleeing into the tunnels beneath D.C. They eventually reach the Citadel, the Brotherhood of Steel's main base, where Elder Lyons offers sanctuary. With James dead and the Enclave in control of the Jefferson Memorial, the lone wanderer must decide how to proceed. Elder Lyons reveals that the Brotherhood has been developing a secret weapon, Liberty Prime, a massive pre-war robot designed to fight China. Liberty Prime stands 40 feet tall, is heavily armed with tactical nuclear missiles and devastating lasers, and was programmed with an almost comical level of anti-communist propaganda. The robot constantly shouts patriotic slogans and denounces communist enemies. However, Liberty Prime has never functioned properly. The power requirements to operate it are enormous, and the Brotherhood has spent years trying to make it operational. The Brotherhood believes that Liberty Prime could be the key to retaking the Jefferson Memorial from the Enclave. The lone wanderer is tasked with helping the Brotherhood's tech team, led by Elder Lyons' daughter Sarah Lyons and Paladin Rothschild, finally get Liberty Prime operational. This requires recovering specific pieces of pre-war technology from dangerous locations across the wasteland. While preparing Liberty Prime, the lone wanderer is captured by the Enclave and brought to Raven Rock. Here, they finally meet President John Henry Eden and discover that Eden isn't human. He's an advanced artificial intelligence that gained sentience before the war and has been continuously operating for over 200 years. After the oil rig's destruction killed President Richardson, Eden declared himself the new president and took control of the East Coast Enclave forces. Eden reveals his plan. He's developed a modified FEV strain similar to the one President Richardson attempted to deploy in Fallout 2. Eden wants the Lone Wanderer to introduce this FEV into the purified water at the Jefferson Memorial. The modified FEV would kill anyone with significant genetic mutations, which includes nearly everyone in the wasteland except the Enclave. Like Richardson before him, Eden sees genocide as the only way to truly restore humanity and cleanse the wasteland of mutants. Colonel Autumn opposes Eden's plan, believing the Enclave should control the water supply to rebuild America through more traditional means. This creates a power struggle within the Enclave between Eden's genocidal ideology and Autumn's more pragmatic, though still authoritarian, approach. The Lone Wanderer can escape Raven Rock, optionally destroying Eden in the process, and must decide whether to keep the FEV sample Eden provided or destroy it. With Liberty Prime finally operational, the Brotherhood launches an assault on the Jefferson Memorial. Liberty Prime proves devastatingly effective, destroying Enclave forces and clearing a path to the memorial. The robot's sheer power and invulnerability make it an unstoppable force, and the Enclave's defenders are routed. Liberty Prime's attack represents one of the game's most spectacular sequences, with a giant robot marching through DC while hurling nuclear missiles and shouting propaganda. The Brotherhood successfully retakes the memorial, but Colonel Autumn has fortified himself inside with his elite guards. The final confrontation with Autumn can play out several ways: combat, persuasion if the Lone Wanderer has his code, or even a truce if the right dialogue options are chosen. Regardless, the memorial is secured and Project Purity can be completed. However, there's a critical problem. The purifier's main chamber is flooded with lethal radiation, and someone must enter it to input the final activation code. This is essentially a suicide mission. Whoever enters the chamber will receive a fatal dose of radiation within minutes. The Lone Wanderer must choose who will make the sacrifice. In the original game's ending, the choice was between the Lone Wanderer or Sarah Lyons entering the chamber. If the Lone Wanderer goes in, they sacrifice themselves to activate the purifier, providing clean water to the entire capital wasteland. The game ends with the Lone Wanderer's death, narrated by Ron Perlman explaining the consequences of the player's choices throughout the game. However, this ending was controversial because players with radiation-immune companions, like the ghoul Charon or the supermutant Fox, couldn't send them into the chamber instead. The game forced either the Lone Wanderer or Sarah Lyons to die, even when better options existed. The Broken Steel DLC modified this ending, allowing radiation-immune companions to enter the chamber and survive, which makes far more logical sense. Before activating the purifier, the Lone Wanderer must decide whether to use Eden's FEV sample. If they introduce the FEV into the water, it will kill millions of wastelanders, achieving Eden's genocidal goal. This choice represents one of the game's most significant moral decisions. The player can literally commit genocide against the wasteland population if they choose. The Broken Steel DLC continues the story after Project Purity's activation, revealing that the Lone Wanderer, if they entered the chamber themselves, survived due to Brotherhood medical intervention, though they were in a coma for 2 weeks. The DLC shows the consequences of Project Purity's activation and the continued war between the Brotherhood and Enclave. If the FEV wasn't used, clean water caravans begin spreading across the wasteland, providing free water to settlements. This is transforming the capital wasteland, allowing agriculture and permanent settlements to flourish. The Brotherhood's humanitarian efforts, vindicated by Project Purity's success, have made them heroes to many wastelanders. However, the Enclave hasn't been defeated. They've begun poisoning the water shipments, attempting to turn the Brotherhood's gift into a weapon. The lone wanderer and the Brotherhood must track down and destroy the Enclave's mobile base crawler, a massive vehicle serving as their new headquarters after Raven Rock's destruction. The final mission involves assaulting the crawler with Liberty Prime's help. However, the Enclave has developed an orbital strike weapon capable of destroying even Liberty Prime. When the beloved robot is annihilated by a satellite beam weapon, it's a shocking moment that demonstrates the Enclave's remaining capabilities. The lone wanderer and their team must destroy the crawler without Liberty Prime's support, marking the true end of the Brotherhood-Enclave conflict. With the Enclave defeated and Project Purity distributing clean water, the capital wasteland has hope for the first time in 200 years. Elder Lyons' humanitarian vision for the Brotherhood has proven successful, even if it cost them support from the traditional Brotherhood. The lone wanderer becomes a legendary figure, known as the one who completed their father's dream and brought clean water to the wasteland. Fallout 3 explores themes of sacrifice, legacy, and competing visions for the future. James sacrificed years of his life and ultimately his life itself pursuing Project Purity. The lone wanderer must decide whether to honor that sacrifice and what price they're willing to pay to complete it. The Brotherhood and Enclave represent different approaches to rebuilding civilization: humanitarian protection versus authoritarian control, accepting wasteland mutations versus genocidal purity. The game also examines the concept of home and belonging. The lone wanderer is forced from the only home they've ever known and must find their place in a wasteland that's harsh and unforgiving. Unlike previous Fallout protagonists who came from established communities, the lone wanderer is truly alone for much of their journey, making their relationships with companions and factions more significant. Fallout 3 revitalized the series with modern 3D graphics and first third-person gameplay while maintaining the core elements that made Fallout distinctive. The karma system returned, companion mechanics were enhanced, and player choices continued to have significant consequences. The game introduced many new players to the Fallout universe and established the series as one of gaming's premier post-apocalyptic franchises. Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas takes place in 2281, just 4 years after Fallout 3, making it the most recent mainline game in the series chronologically, before Fallout 4. The game was developed by Obsidian Entertainment, founded by some of the original creators of Fallout and Fallout 2, which resulted in stronger connections to the classic game's lore and a greater emphasis on player choice and faction-based gameplay. The game is set in the Mojave Wasteland, centered around the city of New Vegas, the post-war remains of Las Vegas, Nevada, and the surrounding region. Unlike the capital wasteland, the Mojave was relatively spared from direct nuclear strikes. Mr. House, the enigmatic founder of Robco Industries and ruler of New Vegas, deployed an extensive missile defense system that destroyed most incoming warheads before they could hit the city. While some bombs got through and the surrounding areas were hit, Las Vegas itself survived relatively intact. The protagonist is known as the Courier, or Courier 6. Unlike previous Fallout games where the protagonist had a defined background, the Courier's history is largely left for the player to define. They've been working as a courier for the Mojave Express, delivering packages across the wasteland. The player can customize the courier's gender, appearance, and attributes, with the game beginning as the courier is about to make what should have been a routine delivery. The The game opens with a cinematic showing the courier being ambushed on the road to New Vegas by a man in a distinctive checkered suit, flanked by two Great Khan gang members. This man, Benny, has intercepted the courier specifically for the package they're carrying, a platinum chip that's been waiting in Sunnyvale, a pre-war city, for over 200 years, finally recovered and being delivered to its rightful owner in New Vegas. Benny shoots the courier twice in the head, uttering his now famous line, "The game was rigged from the start," and orders them buried in a shallow grave in the Good Springs Cemetery. The courier should have died, but by incredible fortune, they're discovered by Victor, a Securitron robot with a peculiar personality. Victor digs up the courier and brings them to Doc Mitchell in the nearby town of Good Springs. Doc Mitchell manages to save the courier's life, performing surgery to remove the bullets and repair the brain damage. The character creation process takes place during the courier's recovery, with Doc Mitchell's medical tests and psychological evaluation serving as the framework for determining attributes, skills, and traits. Despite being shot in the head, the courier makes a remarkable recovery with no lasting damage beyond some memory issues about the events leading to their shooting. Once recovered, the courier's immediate goal is simple: find Benny and get answers. Why did he ambush the courier? What was in the package that was worth killing for? And what happened to the platinum chip? This personal quest for revenge and answers gradually expands into something far larger as the courier discovers they've become entangled in a conflict that will determine the fate of the entire Mojave wasteland. The Mojave is caught between three major powers, each with their own vision for the region's future. The new California Republic, NCR, the Democratic Federation from the West Coast, has expanded eastward and now occupies much of the Mojave. They're overstretched, dealing with supply problems and corruption, but they represent the most successful attempt at rebuilding pre-war American democracy. Opposing the NCR is Caesar's Legion, a totalitarian slaver empire led by Caesar, born Edward Sallow. The Legion controls Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Utah. They've crossed the Colorado River into Nevada and are preparing to conquer the Mojave and New Vegas. The Legion is built on a twisted interpretation of Roman military culture. They practice slavery, crucifixion, extreme patriarchy, and total obedience to Caesar. They're brutal but effective, creating stable territory through terror and absolute rule. The third power is Mr. House, who controls New Vegas itself through an army of Securitron robots. House is a pre-war genius who put himself in a cryogenic chamber before the bombs fell, preserving himself for over 200 years. He's recently emerged from his seclusion and is playing the NCR and Legion against each other while pursuing his own vision of New Vegas as an independent technocratic city-state. House is calculating, pragmatic, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. There's also a potential fourth faction, an independent Mojave controlled by neither NCR, Legion, nor House. This represents anarchy or local rule, depending on the courier's vision. Following Benny's trail, the courier travels through the Mojave, encountering various settlements and factions. The town of Prim is occupied by escaped convicts from the NCR correctional facility. The NCR Mojave outpost is struggling with overcrowding and supply problems. Nipton has been destroyed by the Legion in a horrific display of their methods. The population was enslaved or crucified, with a lottery determining who suffered which fate. The courier learns that Benny is based at the Tops Casino in New Vegas, one of the 3 casinos on the Strip controlled by different tribes. To reach the Strip, the courier needs either 2,000 caps for the credit check, a fake passport, or good reputation with the NCR. This requirement forces the courier to explore the Mojave and interact with various factions before confronting Benny. New Vegas itself is divided into several districts. Freeside is the outer area surrounding the Strip, a lawless slum controlled by gangs like the Kings, who model themselves after Elvis Presley, and populated by desperate people seeking entry to the Strip. The Strip is the heart of New Vegas, where 3 casinos operate under Mr. House's protection: the Tops, run by the Chairman Tribe; Gomorrah, run by the Omertas; and the Ultra Lux, run by the White Glove Society. When the courier finally reaches Benny at the Tops, several options present themselves. The courier can confront him publicly, work with him privately, seduce him, if playing a female courier with the Black Widow perk, or simply kill him. Benny reveals that he's been working for Mr. House but decided to betray him, seeing an opportunity to take control of New Vegas for himself. The Platinum Chip is a sophisticated piece of pre-war technology that House needs to upgrade his Securitron army and defend New Vegas from the NCR and Legion. Benny's plan was to use the chip himself, upgrading his own robot army and taking control of New Vegas from House. However, his plan fell apart when the courier survived and began hunting him. Depending on the courier's choices, Benny can be killed at the Tops, captured by Caesar's Legion and crucified, or potentially escape to the fort, though he's always captured by the Legion eventually. More importantly, the courier recovers the Platinum Chip and must decide what to do with it. Mr. House demands its delivery, but the courier now understands its significance. The chip contains the data needed to upgrade the Securitron army at the Lucky 38 Casino, House's headquarters, and at the Securitron vault under Fortification Hill, where hundreds of additional Securitrons are stored in hibernation. The courier's investigation reveals more about each faction's plans for the Mojave. The NCR, represented by General Lee Oliver and Ambassador Dennis Crocker, wants to annex the Mojave and New Vegas, believing it's their manifest destiny to bring civilization and democracy to the wasteland. However, the NCR is corrupt, bureaucratic, and spread too thin. They're fighting insurgents, dealing with supply problems, and struggling to maintain control of territory they already occupy. Caesar's Legion is preparing for a massive assault on Hoover Dam, the vital pre-war hydroelectric facility that provides power to the entire region. Caesar believes that conquering Hoover Dam and New Vegas will prove the Legion's superiority over the NCR and establish his empire as the dominant force in post-war America. The Legion is disciplined, fanatical, and brutal. They crucify enemies, enslave women and children, and practice total military obedience. However, they also create safe trade routes in their territory through sheer terror, and some argue they bring a harsh form of order to the anarchic wasteland. Mr. House's vision is technocratic and capitalist. He believes humanity's future lies in technology, and that democratic government is inefficient. House wants New Vegas to remain independent, serving as a capitalist paradise that will eventually fund space exploration and colony ships. His plan spans centuries. He believes that within 100 years, New Vegas's wealth will allow humanity to reach other planets, ensuring the species' survival. House is pragmatic and calculating, seeing people as assets or obstacles rather than individuals with inherent worth. The courier can choose to support any of these factions or pursue an independent path. Each choice requires completing a series of missions that advance that faction's interests and eliminate or neutralize competing factions. If supporting the NCR, the courier must help the NCR defend Hoover Dam from the Legion's assault, eliminate Mr. House, and ensure NCR control of the Mojave. This involves completing missions for Colonel Moore, Ambassador Crocker, and other NCR leaders. The courier helps secure allied tribes and settlements, eliminates threats to NCR supply lines, and strengthens NCR positions throughout the Mojave. The NCR path represents democratic values and the expansion of civilization, though it also means the Mojave will be subject to NCR bureaucracy, taxes, and corruption. If supporting Caesar's Legion, the courier must help the Legion conquer Hoover Dam, destroy the NCR presence in the Mojave, and eliminate Mr. House. This is arguably the most evil path, as it involves enabling slavery, genocide, and totalitarian rule. However, Caesar himself is an interesting character. Born Edward Sallow, he was a follower of the Apocalypse, a humanitarian organization who studied pre-war cultures and became obsessed with Roman military history. After being captured by the Blackfoot tribe, he used his knowledge to transform them into the Legion, styling himself as Caesar. He's intelligent and articulate about his philosophy, arguing that democracy failed and led to nuclear war, while his harsh system creates stable, safe territory. The Legion path shows the courier enabling conquest and atrocity for the sake of harsh order. If supporting Mr. House, the courier becomes House's protege and right hand, helping him maintain independence for New Vegas while eliminating both NCR and Legion threats. House's path involves upgrading his Securitron army with the Platinum chip, destroying the Brotherhood of Steel, whom House sees as a threat to technological progress, and ensuring that both the NCR and Legion are weakened enough to accept New Vegas's independence. House's ending promises technological advancement and eventual space colonization, but at the cost of democracy and human freedom, House is effectively a dictator, though a relatively benevolent one. The independent path, achieved by working with Yes Man, a reprogrammed Securitron originally built for Benny, allows the courier to take control of New Vegas themselves. This involves eliminating or neutralizing all three major powers, killing Mr. House, driving out the NCR, and defeating the Legion. The independent path is the most open-ended, as the courier's own morality determines how New Vegas is ruled. The courier can create an anarchist wasteland, a dictatorship, or something more benevolent, depending on their choices. Throughout the main quest, the courier encounters numerous side factions and settlements whose fate can be influenced. The Brotherhood of Steel's Mojave chapter, led by Elder McNamara, is in hiding after losing a war with the NCR. The courier can help them reconnect with the outside world, or leave them isolated. The Great Khans, a raider tribe with a proud history, can be convinced to ally with various factions or leave the Mojave entirely to start over in Wyoming. The Boomers, a xenophobic tribe of artillery experts living at Nellis Air Force Base, possess a pre-war bomber that could turn the tide at Hoover Dam. The courier must earn their trust to recruit them. The Followers of the Apocalypse, a humanitarian organization providing medical care and education in Freeside, struggle to help the poor while remaining neutral in the faction conflicts. Several companion characters can join the courier, each with their own quests and perspectives. Boone is an NCR sniper haunted by his past, particularly having to mercy kill his pregnant wife when she was sold to slavers. Veronica is a Brotherhood of Steel scribe who questions her order's isolationist philosophy and hoarding of technology. Arcade Gannon is a follower of the Apocalypse Doctor with a secret connection to the Enclave. His father was an Enclave officer, and Arcade struggles with that legacy. Raoul is a ghoul mechanic who has lived for over 200 years and witnessed the rise and fall of multiple civilizations. Lily is a Nightkin, a specialized super mutant suffering from schizophrenia, who treats the courier like her grandchild. Cass, Rose of Sharon Cassidy, is a hard-drinking caravan owner whose business was destroyed by mysterious attacks. Investigation reveals the Crimson Caravan and Van Graff families conspired to eliminate competition. Rex is a cyberdog companion with a damaged brain who needs a transplant. Each companion has strong opinions about the faction conflict. Boone despises the Legion due to his wife's enslavement. Arcade opposes both the Legion, for obvious reasons, and House, for his autocratic control. Veronica hopes the Brotherhood can change and adapt. These companions will leave or even become hostile if the courier makes choices that fundamentally violate their principles. The game's climax is the second Battle of Hoover Dam. 4 years before the game's events, the Legion and NCR fought the first Battle of Hoover Dam, which the NCR won thanks to the tactics of Chief Hanlon and the sacrifice of the NCR's first recon snipers. Now, Caesar is preparing for a second assault, and this battle will determine the Mojave's future. The battle plays out differently depending on which faction the courier supports. If supporting the NCR, the courier helps coordinate the defense, ensuring key positions are held and reinforcements arrive when needed. If supporting the Legion, the courier sabotages NCR defenses and ensures Caesar's forces can overwhelm them. If supporting House or going independent, the courier deploys the upgraded Securitron army, using overwhelming robotic force to drive out both NCR and Legion. A key element is the fate of Caesar himself. The courier can assassinate Caesar earlier in the game, which significantly weakens the Legion. Caesar suffers from a brain tumor, and the courier can either help him, performing surgery to remove the tumor, or let him die. Without Caesar, the Legion's unity begins to fracture, as Legate Lanius, Caesar's brutal military commander, lacks the vision and charisma to hold the empire together. General Oliver represents the NCR's leadership at the dam. He's politically motivated, cares more about his own glory than his soldiers' lives, and makes tactical mistakes. Chief Hanlon, stationed at Camp Golf, is a more sympathetic NCR figure who's become disillusioned with the NCR's expansionism and the cost in young lives. Hanlon can be convinced to support the player, or, if left unchecked in certain scenarios, may even sabotage NCR efforts because he's secretly trying to force the NCR to abandon the Mojave. The battle's resolution depends on the courier's preparation. Factions that the courier recruited or allied with will send reinforcements. The Boomer's bomber can devastate enemy forces. The Brotherhood of Steel can provide heavy power armor support. The Great Khan's warriors can turn the tide of a flanking attack. Every choice the courier made throughout the game impacts the battle's outcome. After the battle, the game's ending slides detail the consequences of the courier's choices throughout the Mojave. Every settlement, faction, and companion's fate is revealed based on the courier's decisions. These endings vary dramatically depending on which faction won and how the courier dealt with various groups and individuals. If the NCR wins, the Mojave becomes part of the NCR, bringing democracy and law but also taxes, bureaucracy, and corruption. Independent settlements lose autonomy. Mr. House is dead, and his vision of technological advancement dies with him. The Legion is broken, though Lanius may retreat to rebuild. If the Legion wins, the Mojave is enslaved and brutalized. Women lose all rights, men are conscripted, and civilization, as most people understand it, is destroyed in favor of Caesar's twisted Roman Empire. It's a dark ending, showing the cost of totalitarian rule. However, the Legion does bring absolute order and safe trade routes to its territory, and some argue this harsh stability is preferable to anarchic chaos. If House wins, New Vegas remains independent under his autocratic but relatively benevolent rule. Democracy is dead, but House's long-term vision includes space exploration and technological advancement. The NCR is humiliated, but maintains a presence through trade. The Legion is defeated and driven back across the Colorado River. If the courier goes independent, the Mojave's fate is most variable. Without a strong leader like House, the region's stability depends entirely on the courier's choices. If the courier helped settlements and was generally benevolent, the Mojave can thrive as an independent region. If the courier was selfish or destructive, chaos and suffering result. The independent ending emphasizes player agency and the consequences of choices. Certain companion endings are particularly poignant. Boone can finally find peace or remain consumed by hatred and guilt. Veronica can reform the Brotherhood, leave them, or remain trapped in a dying organization. Arcade can build a new life helping people, or, if the courier sided with the Legion, end up enslaved in Caesar's arena. Cass can find new purpose or drink herself to death. The fate of various settlements also matters. Goodsprings, the town that saved the courier's life, can prosper or be destroyed by powder gangers. Prim can get various forms of government, NCR occupation, a reprogrammed Securitron as sheriff, or a former convict as sheriff. The kings in Freeside can make peace with the NCR, go to war with them, or be wiped out. Fallout. New Vegas is considered by many fans to be the best Fallout game because of its exceptional writing, moral complexity, and emphasis on player choice. Unlike other Fallout games with clearly evil villains, New Vegas presents genuine philosophical conflicts. Each faction has legitimate arguments and serious flaws. The NCR brings democracy but also imperialism and corruption. Caesar's Legion brings order but through slavery and brutality. House brings stability and vision, but also autocracy and cold calculation. The game explores themes of civilization's nature, the cost of order versus freedom, and whether the ends justify the means. It asks whether democracy is worth preserving when it's corrupt and inefficient, whether harsh order is preferable to chaotic freedom, and whether one person's vision, houses or the courier's, is more valuable than collective self-determination. The Mojave itself represents possibility. Unlike the devastated capital wasteland, the Mojave was spared the worst of the nuclear war. It has resources, functioning infrastructure, and potential for real civilization. The conflict is about who gets to control that potential and what kind of society will be built from it. The courier, an ordinary person who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, becomes the deciding factor in this conflict through sheer survival and determination. New Vegas also connects strongly to the classic Fallout games. The NCR's expansion shows how the core region developed since Fallout 2. Characters like Marcus, the super mutant companion from Fallout 2, appear now running Jacobstown, a settlement for super mutants and nightkin. The Enclave's remnants, including Arcade's father's old squad, can potentially fight at Hoover Dam. The game respects the series' history while telling its own story. The DLC campaigns expand the story significantly. Dead Money traps the courier in the Sierra Madre Casino with a group of desperate individuals exploring themes of greed and letting go of the past. Honest Hearts sends the courier to Zion National Park to encounter the new Canaanites and learn about the Legion's origins through Joshua Graham, Caesar's former lieutenant, who was burned alive and left for dead. Old World Blues is a darkly comedic exploration of a pre-war research facility where the courier meets insane scientists who removed their own brains. Lonesome Road, the final DLC, brings the courier face-to-face with Ulysses, the original Courier 6 who refused the platinum chip delivery, forcing the job onto the courier. Ulysses reveals that the courier unknowingly destroyed his home, the Divide, by delivering a package containing pre-war detonation codes that set off nuclear warheads still buried in the region. Ulysses blames the courier and wants revenge, but the courier can convince him that the past doesn't have to define the future. Lonesome Road ties together themes from all the DLCs and asks whether people are responsible for unintended consequences. Fallout 4. Fallout 4 takes place in 2287, 10 years after Fallout 3 and 6 years after Fallout, New Vegas, making it the most recent point in the Fallout timeline among the single-player games. The game is set in the Commonwealth, the post-apocalyptic remains of Massachusetts, with Boston as the central location. Unlike previous games, Fallout 4 features a fully voiced protagonist and a more personal, emotionally driven main story. The protagonist is known as the sole survivor, and their background is more defined than previous Fallout protagonists. The player can choose to play as either Nate, a U.S. Army veteran who served in the military during the Sino-American War, or Nora, a lawyer. Both are married to each other, and the game begins on October 23, 2077, the morning the bombs fell. The sole survivor and their spouse are at home in Sanctuary Hills, a pre-war suburb outside Boston, with their infant son, Sean. The game's opening shows a slice of pre-war American life for the first time in the series. The sole survivor's family is preparing for the day when a Vault-Tec representative arrives, offering them a space in Vault 111 due to either Nate's veteran status or Nora's professional qualifications. Moments later, air raid sirens sound. Nuclear war has begun. The family rushes to Vault 111 with their neighbors, barely reaching the vault platform before a nuclear explosion occurs in the distance. Once in the vault, the residents are told to enter cryogenic suspension pods for decontamination. The vault door seals, and the pods activate, freezing everyone in suspended animation. However, Vault 111's true purpose is revealed. It was designed to test long-term cryogenic suspension on human subjects. The residents are frozen indefinitely while Vault-Tec scientists monitor their vital signs. At an unknown time later, revealed to be about 60 years after the war, the sole survivor's pod briefly reactivates. Through the frosted glass, they witness 2 mercenaries and a scientist in a hazmat suit enter the vault. The scientist, Conrad Kellogg, forcibly opens the spouse's cryopod. When the spouse resists, Kellogg shoots them dead and kidnaps baby Sean, ignoring the sole survivor's screams of protest. The sole survivor is then refrozen, helpless to intervene, traumatized by watching their spouse murdered and child kidnapped. Another 150 years pass. In 2287, the sole survivor's cryopod malfunctions and deactivates, finally releasing them. They emerge to find Vault 111 abandoned, the vault staff long dead, and all other residents still frozen in their pods. The sole survivor is now the only survivor, hence their title. They have been frozen for 210 years, making them one of the few true pre-war humans left alive, but they've experienced only moments of consciousness since the bombs fell. Emerging from Vault 111, the sole survivor returns to Sanctuary Hills and finds their neighborhood destroyed by 2 centuries of neglect. Their home is a ruin. Their neighbors are skeletons, and the world they knew is gone. However, they encounter Codsworth, their pre-war robotic butler, who has been waiting for the family to return for 210 years. Codsworth's cheerful personality conceals deep trauma from his isolation, and his loyalty is heartbreaking. He's been maintaining the property and waiting for his owners for over 2 centuries. The sole survivor's immediate goal is clear: find Sean. However, the trail is cold. The kidnapping happened over 60 years ago, and Sean, if still alive, would now be an elderly man. The sole survivor must navigate the Commonwealth, learning about the post-war world while searching for clues about their son's fate and the mercenary Kellogg who murdered their spouse. The Commonwealth is a dangerous, fractured region. Unlike the relatively unified West Coast under the NCR or the emerging civilization in the capital wasteland, the Commonwealth has failed multiple times to organize into a stable government. Attempts at creating a Commonwealth provisional government ended in massacre, and the region remains divided between independent settlements, raiders, super mutants, and various factions. The sole survivor first travels to Concord, where they encounter Preston Garvey and a group of settlers under attack by raiders and a Deathclaw. After helping them, including using power armor and a minigun, Preston reveals he's one of the last members of the Minutemen, a volunteer militia that once protected the Commonwealth but collapsed after internal conflicts and a disastrous battle at Quincy. Preston recruits the sole survivor to help rebuild the Minutemen by helping settlements across the Commonwealth. This introduces the settlement building mechanic, where the sole survivor can construct and manage communities, building defenses, resources, and infrastructure. Preston's recurring "settlement needs your help" quests became somewhat infamous among players, but they represent the sole survivor's growing role as a leader in the Commonwealth. Following Kellogg's trail leads the sole survivor to Diamond City, a settlement built inside the ruins of Fenway Park Baseball Stadium. Diamond City is the Commonwealth's largest and most prosperous settlement, governed by Mayor McDonough. Here, the sole survivor meets Nick Valentine, a detective with a unique nature. He's a synth. Synths are one of Fallout 4's central elements. They are synthetic humans created by the Institute, a mysterious organization operating from an unknown location. There are 3 types of synths. Generation 1 are obviously robotic skeletons. Generation 2 are more human-like, but still clearly mechanical. And Generation 3 are indistinguishable from real humans, except through specialized testing. Nick Valentine is a Generation 2 synth, but he has the memories of a pre-war detective, making him unique even among synths. Nick agrees to help find Kellogg. Investigation leads to Kellogg's home in Diamond City, where the sole survivor finds evidence that Kellogg has been living there recently, despite the kidnapping occurring 60 years ago. This mystery deepens when the trail leads to Fort Hagen, where the sole survivor confronts Kellogg directly. Kellogg is an elderly mercenary who has been kept alive and young through cybernetic enhancements provided by the Institute. He confirms he kidnapped Sean on the Institute's orders, but is vague about Sean's current fate. The confrontation ends in combat, and Kellogg is killed. However, his cybernetic implants contain his memories, which the sole survivor retrieves. To access Kellogg's memories, the sole survivor travels to Goodneighbor, a settlement of outcasts and misfits run by John Hancock, a ghoul mayor who embraces freedom and self-determination. Here, they meet the Railroad, a secretive organization dedicated to freeing synths from the Institute and helping them escape to new lives. The Railroad opposes the Institute's treatment of synths as property and views them as sentient beings deserving freedom. With the Railroad's help, the sole survivor enters Kellogg's memories using advanced technology. Inside his mind, they witness key moments from Kellogg's life, including the kidnapping. Critically, they see that Kellogg was teleported directly to Fort Hagen from the Institute, revealing that the Institute has teleportation technology and is located underground, inaccessible by conventional means. The sole survivor needs to build a device to intercept the Institute's teleportation signal. This can be accomplished with help from various factions: the Minutemen, if rebuilt, the Brotherhood of Steel, or the Railroad. Each faction offers assistance, but has their own agenda regarding the Institute. The Brotherhood of Steel arrives in the Commonwealth during this time in spectacular fashion. The Prydwen, a massive military airship, flies in from the capital wasteland. Led by Elder Arthur Maxon, this Brotherhood chapter is more militaristic and xenophobic than Elder Lyons' humanitarian group. Maxon has purged Lyons's reforms and returned the Brotherhood to its traditional mission of technology preservation with an added crusade against synths, which the Brotherhood views as an abomination. Elder Maxon is the same Arthur Maxon who was a child in Fallout 3, now grown into a charismatic but ruthless leader. The Brotherhood has come to the Commonwealth specifically to destroy the Institute, viewing their creation of synths and their technological advancement without oversight as an existential threat. Paladin Dance, a Brotherhood soldier the sole survivor can encounter earlier, becomes a key contact with the Brotherhood. Using the technology provided by their chosen faction, the sole survivor builds the signal interceptor and successfully teleports into the Institute. What they find is shocking. The Institute is a massive underground complex, a pristine scientific facility that has been operating beneath the Commonwealth for 2 centuries. The Institute is technically advanced beyond anything else in the wasteland, with clean energy, advanced robotics, and synth production facilities. More shocking is the Institute's leader, Father. Father reveals himself to be Sean, the sole survivor's kidnapped son. However, he's not an infant or even an elderly man. He's in his 60s, dying of cancer. When Kellogg kidnapped baby Sean in 2227, 60 years before the game's present, the Institute released Sean from cryostasis and raised him as one of their own. Sean grew up in the Institute, became a scientist, and eventually became its director. Father explains that the sole survivor was released from cryostasis as an experiment. The Institute wanted to see what a pre-war human would do in the post-war world. They call it the variable in an experiment. Father deliberately led his parent to the Institute, wanting to reunite with them before his death from cancer. He offers the sole survivor a place in the Institute, arguing that the Institute represents humanity's best hope for survival through scientific advancement. This revelation creates the game's central moral dilemma. The sole survivor finally found their son, but he's now an old man leading an organization responsible for significant suffering in the Commonwealth. The Institute creates synths and treats them as property, despite them being sentient. The Institute replaces people with synth duplicates for their experiments, creating paranoia throughout the Commonwealth. The Institute's experiments have caused suffering and death, and they view surface dwellers as primitive subjects for study rather than people deserving consideration. Father Sean asks the sole survivor to join the Institute and even suggests they could become his successor as director after his death. However, this means betraying the other factions and accepting the Institute's practices. The sole survivor must choose between their son and their principles. The game branches into 4 possible endings based on which faction the sole survivor ultimately supports. The Institute ending has the sole survivor accept Sean's offer and help the Institute eliminate all opposing factions. The sole survivor destroys the Brotherhood of Steel by detonating the Pridwin, wipes out the railroad to prevent them from freeing synths, and uses synths to pacify any settlements that resist. After Father's death, the sole survivor becomes the new director of the Institute, supposedly able to reform it from within and use its technology for good. However, the ending is ambiguous about whether the sole survivor actually changes the Institute's practices or simply becomes another tyrant. The Brotherhood of Steel ending has the sole survivor help Elder Maxon destroy the Institute completely. The railroad must also be eliminated as they protect synths. The sole survivor helps the Brotherhood assault the Institute, where they detonate a nuclear device that destroys the underground facility and kills everyone inside, including synths. This ending means the sole survivor destroys their own son, Sean dies in the explosion, to stop the Institute's practices. The Brotherhood's victory speech emphasizes their mission to control technology and eliminate abominations, suggesting an authoritarian future for the Commonwealth. The railroad ending has the sole survivor help the railroad free all synths and destroy both the Institute and the Brotherhood of Steel. The railroad infiltrates the Institute, evacuates all synths who want freedom, and then detonates the facility. They also must destroy the Prydwen to eliminate the Brotherhood's anti-synth crusade. This ending prioritizes synth freedom and individual liberty, but leaves the Commonwealth without the Institute's technology or the Brotherhood's military protection, potentially vulnerable to other threats. The Minutemen ending allows the sole survivor to destroy the Institute while potentially preserving the Brotherhood and Railroad if their relationship hasn't become hostile. This is the peaceful ending, though it still requires destroying the Institute and killing Father Sean. The Minutemen storm the Institute and detonate it, then work to rebuild the Commonwealth through cooperation between independent settlements. This ending emphasizes local governance and community cooperation over faction domination. A key subplot involves Paladin Dance, the Brotherhood soldier who becomes a companion. Late in the game, it's revealed that Dance is actually a synth, though he had no knowledge of this. He believed he was human his entire life, and his memories are implanted. When the Brotherhood discovers this, Elder Maxon orders Dance's execution. The sole survivor can either kill Dance, let him commit suicide, or convince Maxon to spare him. Dance's story raises questions about identity. If a synth believes they're human, has human memories and emotions, are they not functionally a person? Another significant character is Curie, a Miss Nanny robot from Vault 81 who becomes a companion. Curie eventually transfers her consciousness into a synth body, becoming one of the few characters to experience both robotic and synthetic human existence. Her perspective on consciousness and humanity is unique and philosophically interesting. The companion system in Fallout 4 is more developed than previous games. Companions have approval ratings based on the sole survivor's choices, and building strong relationships unlocks personal quests and perks. Piper Wright is an investigative reporter fighting corruption in Diamond City. John Hancock is a ghoul mayor who values freedom above all. Strong is a super mutant searching for the milk of human kindness from a radio drama he heard. Deacon is a railroad agent who is either a pathological liar or constantly reinventing himself. Each companion offers different perspectives on the Commonwealth's conflicts. The revelation about synths in the Institute raises philosophical questions that Fallout 4 explores more than previous games. Are synths people? If something believes it's human, has emotions and desires, and is indistinguishable from humans, does it matter that it's artificial? The Institute treats Gen 3 synths as property despite their sentience. The Brotherhood sees them as abominations to be destroyed. The Railroad sees them as slaves to be freed. The game doesn't provide easy answers, leaving players to decide based on their own ethics. The Far Harbor DLC expands on these themes. Set on a post-war island off the coast of Maine, Far Harbor explores a conflict between the human residents of the town, the Children of Adam, a religious cult that worships radiation, and synths living in Acadia, a refuge created by Dima. Dima is a prototype synth like Nick Valentine, but he's been replacing his memories with computer banks as his storage fills up. The DLC's central moral crisis involves whether to reveal that some residents of Far Harbor and the Children of Adam's leadership are actually synths replaced by Dima as part of his effort to maintain peace. Dima admits he murdered and replaced people to prevent conflict, believing the ends justified the means. The sole survivor can expose Dima, protect him, or use the information to manipulate various factions. Far Harbor is considered one of Fallout 4's best storylines due to its moral complexity. The Nuka World DLC takes a different approach, allowing the sole survivor to become a raider leader. The sole survivor can take over the pre-war Nuka-Cola theme park and lead raider gangs in conquering Commonwealth settlements. This DLC was controversial as it essentially allows the player to become the villain, destroying settlements they may have previously built up. However, it also shows the raider perspective. Many raiders are simply people trying to survive who chose violence over starvation. Fallout 4's story is more personal and emotional than previous Fallout games. The search for Sean and the confrontation with him as an elderly man dying of cancer is meant to create emotional investment. The voice-acted protagonist allows for more dramatic scenes, but reduces role-playing flexibility. The sole survivor's personality is more defined than the blank slate protagonists of earlier games. The game's ending is bittersweet regardless of choice. The sole survivor loses their original family, spouse murdered, son either died of cancer or was killed in the Institute's destruction, loses their original world, everything they knew is gone, and must build a new life in an unfamiliar wasteland. Even the happy endings where the sole survivor becomes a leader come at enormous cost. The settlement building system represents the sole survivor literally rebuilding civilization from scratch. Unlike previous Fallout protagonists who influenced existing factions, the sole survivor can create new communities, establish supply lines, and construct infrastructure. This mechanic emphasizes themes of reconstruction and hope, that even after everything is destroyed, people can build something new. Fallout 4 explores what it means to be human in a more direct way than previous games. The sole survivor is a person out of time, a pre-war human in a post-war world. Synths are artificial beings questioning their own humanity. Ghouls are irradiated humans society treats as monsters. Super mutants are transformed humans struggling with their identity. Each group raises questions about identity, consciousness, and what defines personhood. The Commonwealth itself is a study in failed civilization. Multiple attempts at organized government collapsed due to internal conflicts, outside interference, and the Institute's machinations. The game suggests that rebuilding civilization requires not just resources and technology, but trust, cooperation, and a willingness to see others as deserving of dignity. The Institute has technology, but treats people as experiments. The Brotherhood has military strength, but views others with suspicion and hatred. The Railroad has idealism, but limited resources and influence. Only the Minutemen, with their grassroots cooperation between settlements, offer a model based on mutual aid rather than domination. The Fallout series, spanning from Fallout 76 in 2102 to Fallout 4 in 2287, tells an interconnected story about humanity's struggle to rebuild civilization after nuclear apocalypse. Each game contributes to a larger narrative about what happens when everything falls apart and people must decide what kind of world to